Hello everyone, Christina here. Welcome to another card video at my YouTube channel and blog. Today is my fourth card using my Capsule Papercrafting supplies, and this one is it's just bright and cheerful, even though it really only uses a couple colors. It's more monochromatic and very, very simple. So the stamps that I'm using is Greetings Mix 1 from Simon Says Stamp, and I'm going to use the You Are My Sunshine greeting down in that bottom corner. I'm going to start out by taking some black cardstock. This cardstock is actually from Hero Arts. This is their Hero Hues Pitch Black cardstock, and I'm going to trim it down so that it's basically the size of an A2 card. That's just because I want to keep standard sizes of cut cardstock for later. I will be cutting it down to be more narrow later. I'm also pre-cutting my card base here out of some Neenah Classic Crest Solar White. I've got some watercolor paper here. This is Fabriano Artistico, and I'm just taking it off the block. I didn't have a smaller piece that was the size I needed, so I'm going to be cutting down a full sheet. Cut it down to 4.5 by 5 3/4, so it's just a 1/4 inch bigger in each direction than an A2 card. I then started my stamping by stamping the You Are My Sunshine greeting on the black cardstock. I used some Versamark ink for this because I'm going to be heat embossing this greeting, and Versamark is the perfect sticky ink for embossing because it takes just a little bit of time to dry, so you don't have to hurry too much to apply the embossing powder. So this is Alabaster embossing powder from Brutus Monroe. I just sprinkled that on and then tapped off the excess. And then I took my heat tool and heat set this until all of that embossing powder was smooth and melted. I then took a pencil and just made a little mark where it needs to be cut so that I have an equal distance around the greeting. And this allows me to then put this black piece of cardstock in my paper trimmer and line up that pencil mark with the edge of my trimmer and get this cut to just the perfect size. So I'm just very carefully lining up that pencil mark and then bringing down the arm of my guillotine trimmer. Now I'm going to work on the watercolor background that goes behind my greeting. I've taped down some watercolor paper, and I've used some blue painter's tape for this, just down to a hardboard. And I'm going to be using my Paper Fashion watercolors from American Crafts. This is the basic set, and you can create a ton of different color mixes with this palette here. I'm mostly going to focus on oranges and yellows. So I'm using the red shade and the yellow shade to create a nice orange. And I actually created a couple different oranges and then a bright yellow. I then took my wide flat brush and just put water down on my watercolor paper. I want the color on this background to be very soft and muted and sort of mix and meld with each other. So I wanted to use a wet on wet technique, meaning that the paper is wet and then I'm bringing in wet watercolor. This just helps the paint and the color just move around a little bit more. Sped up the video, it's just double speed, or actually 4 times speed, so that you can see the entire painting process. I just want a little bit of different color variation, maybe some more areas that are a little bit more reddish in color, and then also just yellow areas. Once I had that color kind of evenly distributed, I went around the outer edge with a wet brush just to soften the edges, and I also brought in that greeting just to make sure I had a nice big area to go behind. I started to let that air dry and then got impatient and brought in my heat tool just to speed up that drying process. Now, if you wanted to, you could leave it like this with just one layer of color, but I wanted to intensify those colors some more, so I decided to bring in some additional watercolor. Same colors I used before, these are just going on top of that first layer. This is going to give it a little bit more of an organic feel, and it's also going to make these colors a little bit more saturated, a little more brightness, because as you know with watercolors, when they dry, they do tend to dry back a little bit and they're not quite as intense. I also decided to put some paint on a paintbrush and tap it with my hand to get some nice paint droplets. And that red was looking pretty intense, so I did it with yellow and then took a paper towel and just sopped up some of that color, and that took away some of that intensity and made it just right. So now I have my watercolor piece all dried, removed from the board, and I'm going to be using the Botanicals 3 stamp set from Paper Smooches to add some fun leaf details around my greeting. So I'm placing my greeting where it will eventually go on my card. And then I'm going to position the leaf stamps all the way around it, just so I can get a nice idea of where they need to be stamped so that they do show coming out from behind that greeting. So I place those down, and then I close the door of my MISTI so that it picks it up and has those stamps in the exact position where I want them. Removed that greeting, and then inked up my stamps with that same Versamark watermark ink. So this is that same sticky ink that's perfect for heat embossing powder. I actually stamped these leaves twice since this is textured watercolor paper, and I wanted to have a really nice impression. And then sprinkled on some of that white embossing powder, and then heat set it with my heat tool. Now, to finish off the area around this center greeting I'm going to be putting on, I put some more leaves down, just like that first round of stamping, and then transferred them to the door of my MISTI, inked them up with some Versamark ink, just like I did before, and then stamped them down. And I, again, sprinkled on some white embossing powder, and then heat set that with my heat tool. So now it's time to sort of assemble my card. The first thing I'm going to do is trim down this watercolor background so that it's a little bit smaller than an A2 card. And then I scored my card base at 5.5 to create a top folding card. I put some foam tape on the back of my watercolor panel. A lot of foam tape, actually. I didn't want any areas to be saggy. And then I pressed that down onto the card base. I then put some foam tape on the back of that black greeting area and place that over the top of that center area, exactly where I had it positioned before when I was doing my leaf stamping. So the card is essentially finished now. I just thought I would add some white dots with a white gel pen. I liked that paint splatter with the kind of orange and yellow shades, so I thought having some white dots would look awesome as well. So this is going to finish my card for today. I have absolutely loved using the supplies from my Capsule Paper Crafting list. Just having a limited amount of supplies really has freed up some more creative space in my mind, and it makes it easier to clean up, and I have really loved the experience so far. Thanks for watching today. I'll see you guys in another video very soon.